All right, what's up, everybody? This is Brian Watson. most of you know, I am a minister, been a pastor for several years. Also, I have spent time in the educational system. I currently am a middle school special ed teacher, and one of my focuses is on intergenerational ministry, intergenerational leadership, trying to connect our generations, bridging gaps. Now, I'm excited about the topic tonight because I'm going to talk about what millennials wish church leaders understood. Again, what millennials wish church leaders understood. And I'm going to, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is there's an upcoming webinar that I'm doing on November 18th, and it's about engaging Gen Z and millennials in church and nonprofit leadership. And so I'm going to do some interviews leading up to that webinar with both millennials and Gen Z. And we're going to talk about some issues that I believe are really, really important for pastors, church leaders, anybody involved, ministry, nonprofit leadership. We're going to talk about some issues that I believe are very, very important because I encounter a lot of pastors and leaders who are trying to figure out, how do I connect with my young adults? How do I connect with younger generations? How do I connect with teenagers? How do I connect with them? How do I keep them engaged in what we're doing? How do we develop them and empower them for leadership? And so we're going to talk about that tonight. And I am joined by Joshua Palmer, who is a co-worker. He's also a brother in the faith. He's also a basketball coach, head basketball coach, a high school basketball coach. And so he is a millennial, as well as someone who works with Gen Z and some Gen Alpha. And so I wanted him to come on tonight and just share a little bit about his perspective. He is a member of Church of the Bay. Shout out to Pastor Drew Johnson.
Yes, sir. Yes,
He
sir.
is a
Shout
member
out
there, and just have him just to come on and just chat. And we're just going to talk about his perspective on this subject of millennials and how churches can be more engaging with millennials. What's up, Mr. Palmer?
Yes, Dr. Watson, man. First off, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be on this platform and just have this conversation about bridging the generation in the church. So I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining in. Now let's get right into it tonight.
Yeah.
When you think about your experience in church or ministry, what's one thing you wish older church leaders really understood about millennials? One thing you wish church leaders, older church leaders especially, understood about millennials?
Well, with being a millennial, of course, I would say just having an authentic, real relationship with um, the people in the church, not only like the older generation, but with the millennials. So being able to connect with them in a way where it's transferable and, we feel like, we're being led by someone that is, just putting it all out there, and that's what the main thing I believe our generation is looking for, just that real relationship, authentic, because we know when something is, is not right, or when, someone is being fake. We grew up in a generation where, we heard, church people are fake, church people is this and that and that. So I feel like some of us, not all of us, I feel like some of us already have that stigma about the church. So, and like people are judgy and people are this and that. So when we come into church, we're looking, first of all, we already have a wall up. We're already looking around trying to, fill out the church and how the people are acting towards us. So we're just looking for, when it comes to even the people greeting you at the door, when the people, leading you to your seat, the ushers, are the people in there real, or are they having a mask on, or are they just being fake, or are they trying to connect outside of church? Because we know the church is the body of people. Um, it's not the building. So is anybody trying to connect with you outside of church? Are people trying to have real conversations with you outside of church and not just in the church? So I believe that's what we're looking for.
That's good. Now, for those of you that may be just joining in, I really encourage you to share this, to like, to comment, share, especially with your pastors. If you're not a pastor, if you are a pastor, share with some leaders or fellow pastors as well, so that they can take part actually in this conversation. Maybe you have a comment or a question that you want to ask, and we can talk about that as well. Now, I want to ask you, Mr. Palmer, in your opinion, what are the biggest misconceptions that church leaders have about your generation's priorities and values? What are the biggest misconceptions?
I feel like the misconceptions is we're just trying to just be entertained, that we just, we're all about technology, social media, and we want to be entertained, and, it has to be quick, we can't, it has to be structured in a way where we're not holding them in service for a long time. It doesn't have to be like 2 3 hours like back in the day you was at church for hours on the Sunday. But I feel like that is something that could be a misconception when it comes to the millennials is we're only just looking to be entertained, or just a feel good sermon, something that we could uh, uh, um, you know take and just just make us feel good about ourselves, which I feel like for me, I'm looking for more something concrete, something more deep, a deeper relationship with the Lord, a deeper relationship with the community and the people, and not just, a me standpoint, you know. So,
That's a good point, because I think at the end of the day, and I talk about this in some of my workshops and trainings, that at the end of the day, it's about discipleship. It's about
yeah.
us growing in the knowledge of Jesus Christ and being better disciples. And I think we feel at times we need to have all the lights and the smokes,
Mhm.
the smoke and all of that. Um, but it's not really about that. It really is about relationships. And you talk about that being genuine, having real relationships. I think that's important in us growing together
Yeah.
in the faith. I think that's very important.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
so how does leadership style impact engagement? For example, how do millennials respond differently to a collaborative type of relationship versus the top down, where you got somebody that calls the shots and everybody needs to get in line? How does that work as far as engagement?
Mm. Yeah, we definitely love collaborative um, leadership. Um, the top down method, I think we shy away from that. We want to feel like we're included. And I feel like when we see our pastors or our leaders in the church after a service, or even before a service, come around with the congregation and just fellowship and talk and just have meaningful conversations, and and it could just be, hey, how your day, how you doing, um, like something that small could lead into something big. You never know what somebody's going through. So just having your pastors or your leaders out there talking and fellowshipping and just, having that meaningful connection, you know, with the people is what it's about. So definitely a collaborative style, even when it comes to like building the church. Just being able to talk things out and not going to, you know, having going to one person, then they relay the message. It should be like everybody should be part of that meeting if it's like if if they're trying to grow the church. All the workers, everybody that's serving should be in the meeting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you all grew up with more of collaboration. Even
Mm-hmm.
we talk about school, it's group
Mm-hmm.
style learning.
Yeah.
People are sitting like at our school, they're sitting at tables
Yeah.
versus traditional desks,
Yes.
and it's always partner up and think, pair, share, and all of
Yeah.
this. So
Yes.
I think you all have grown up, and younger generations, even those behind you all, have grown up with the idea of we're doing this together.
Mm-hmm.
But older leaders want to see it as I'm in charge. And it's, of course, not all of them. You don't want to
Yeah.
put everybody in the same bucket, but the typical style of leadership is I'm the leader, y'all fall in line, do what I say.
Yeah.
But something else you mentioned in there, I think is important too, and that is communication and connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Just having those conversations, even like the conversations that we have sometimes about generations and some of our differences. I think that's good for older people to have conversations, leaders, people in leadership, to have those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't help somebody if you don't really understand them or you don't know them. And that only comes through communication and getting to know them.
Exactly, exactly. You got to know the people in your church. I know some of these churches are big and large, and it's impossible to know every single body. But if you can have an ideal from the different people that you put in charge, like I said, you got ushers, you got people that's greeting at the door, and you got people that are serving in different areas. They're talking to people. So when you bring them all together in a meeting and just to talk about, hey, what are you guys seeing in the church? What are you guys, feeling and stuff like that? And you can really get down to what your church really needs, because hey, some churches really need a certain type of preaching. We see that Paul, he even mapped it out when in the beginning of Revelations, when he was talking about all the different churches. So different churches have certain things that need to be discussed, and you will miss the mark in your preaching. You will miss the mark in how you're trying to develop your church if you don't know um, what's going on in your congregation. So you have to be out there. You can't just
Yeah,
be like, I'm the leader and just, hey, I'm just about to come, preach on Sunday. The
right.
Lord speaks to me. I pray to God. He's the one who's telling me these sermons and the word, and I hope you guys receive it. No, it can't be like that.
Yeah. It really is about developing those relationships, and that's done outside.
Yeah,
I say outside of the Sunday service, but we focus a lot on the Sunday service. But if you're going to
right.
develop those relationships, a lot of times that has to come fellowships and
Yeah.
discipleship groups and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the role of authenticity and how that plays in connecting with millennials. How can leaders communicate in a way that feels more real and relatable?
Um, I would say just come as who you are, and just give us a genuine breakdown of who is up there talking to us. So we like to know, like, really, like, who is leading us. We can't lead someone blindly, being blinded. Okay, we're as millennials. I feel like we're gonna see, like, if your lifestyle is matching up, or like if we really like seeing, like, what you're really saying. So just being able to connect with us, just first off, just um talking to us with love and care. Sometimes that could be, just it could come with, like, just telling us what we need to know or what we need to hear, not what we like to hear, what we want to hear, but what we need to hear. All right. I just think about like uh, um, my grandmother. You know, my grandmother always kept it real. You know, even sometimes when it hurt. You know, but I knew that she loved me because she would, always keep it real, and that's the thing. You know, if you just preach or talk to us with authenticity and just keep it real with us, you know, we we're gonna follow. You know.
Now let me ask you this, and this is in line with what you just talked about. If you could redesign church involvement, you could
Hmm.
redesign church involvement. What would it look like to make space for more meaningful participation from millennials? What would that look like if you could redesign church involvement?
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, we we see churches that are doing this. It's not like no churches are doing this, but just having more people that are millennials in these spaces to come in and fellowship or connect with people, putting them in a leadership position. When we come to a church, we don't want to see a church full of well seasoned people like vets or older people only. You know, we would like to see people that are, um, like around 30, 40, trying to connect with us as well. And also, a lot of fellowshipping and community, and just being involved outside of church buildings. Our church, Church of the Bay, is real good at that, at creating these groups that 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 we're able to connect with other people in the church that we might not know that we have a lot in common. So, like for instance, you know, I created a group within the church just called the Bay Ballers, and it was just something where we go to the park, play basketball, and talk a little about what is going on, and how how you feeling. We add the we bring God into the space, and just something so little like that, goes a long way. And you see people, you know, really connecting with the other people in the church and feeling like they have a home. That's the main thing. Feeling like they have a home to come to, on Sunday.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that feeling like they have a home. So there's that connection that, again,
Hmm.
going back to what you talked about earlier about genuine, relatable,
Hmm.
authenticity, those words that really mean that you're not trying to pretend, you're not trying to put on
Yeah.
air, trying to be something that, trying to impress people or feel like you got to
Yeah.
be a certain way. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's important for millennials, for Gen Z. They want to see that authenticity and those
Hmm.
connections come as we are transparent and being
Yeah.
authentic with
And
people.
just come in and just opening the doors to everybody, like come, like having a come as you are mentality.
Yeah.
You don't have to come all Sunday's best, suited, the women wearing dresses or skirts, got the hats, that's all good. But in today's time, just it's way more than that. It's way more than that. We can't focus on those little things and just we're churches would do people a disservice if you're focusing on these legalistic things, in the church. So
Now I want to kind of switch as we get to a close. I want to ask you about commitment because one of the stereotypes of millennials is that you all are not committed. You don't like to make commitment. Many
mhm,
leaders feel frustrated because
mhm,
they think millennials don't want to commit long term. So,
mhm.
how would you respond to that? Is it lack of commitment, or is it something deeper?
Um, it can be a lack of commitment, but I feel like it goes deeper where it comes to a point where, some of us don't fully want to change. We come, we get so used to this um, way living, and we're trying to, uh, a lot of us, we're trying to perform at work. We're trying to, you know, uh, uh, just have structure outside of of church, and just do stuff our way. And for us to really commit to his will and what he has for us, that means we have to fully change. um, so I feel like that's where it comes into play. Some of us doesn't want to fully change and commit to the Lord's will.
So would you say that for some it is a commitment issue?
Yeah, it's a commitment issue. Not fully wanting to be submersed into his word, and almost having like the 1 foot in, 1 foot out type deal. That could be either you us looking at the church as a place where they're fake and you know they're not real at the church, or I don't even need the church to be connected with God, because we see that that's starting to be a trend. I'm in my word, I pray to God, but the Lord wants us to have community. It says you have to have two, because the other one will pick you up. So um, you know we're trying to we're trying to give excuses of why we're not in the church, why we're not involved, and all that really is we're not fully wanting to commit to his will. So I think it is a lack of commitment, but it goes um, it, it's because of the way that society has us viewing the church, has some of us viewing the church, you know. So it could either, parents been church hurt before, grandparents been church hurt before, and you just don't want to be church hurt. So it's it's a lot of that.
Now, is there something that churches can do? Do you feel that there is something that pastors and church leaders can do to address that commitment? Maybe like short-term projects, or say, well, help us out this month, instead of thinking, well, we're just going to do this forever and we need you to do
Mhm.
this. It's like Supreme Court. You're
Right.
sitting here forever. Is there something that pastors and leaders can do to address that, understanding that millennials may not want to be committed long term?
Um. Yeah. I don't like to be like a broken record, but hey, man, just community is really big, man. Getting out there, getting into those spaces where millennials might be at, like, go to have groups, go to parks, have go to like parades, and just spread the word, through different activities that are going on in the community, and just build awareness within your community. Some people may not know your church is doing all these things because you're not getting out there physically. You may have an online presence, but we know that people only see what their algorithm allows them to see. So we got to get out there and really show that, hey, these doors are open for every single one of you guys. Everybody that's here, come as you are type of mentality. Like I said, if you got tattoos, if you hey, if you have a past, whatever it may be, you do not have to be clean to come into this church. Some people feel like they have to clean up before they come in. No, come as you are. You know.
That's good. Uh, Before we wrap this up, for those that may just be joining, we're talking about what millennials wish church leaders understood. What millennials wish church leaders understood. I'm talking to my coworker, brother in the faith, Joshua Palmer.
Yeah.
He is a middle school, high school teacher, as well as a basketball coach. He's also a man of faith, a member of Church on the Bay. Is it Church on the Bay or Church of the Bay?
Church of the Bay.
Church of the Bay, Pastor Drew Johnson. And I'm excited to have him today. And we've shared some great things that I think pastors and leaders can take and really process and think through. I want to ask you one last question before we go, and that is, what is one practical step that every church or nonprofit leader could take this month to better engage and empower millennials? One practical step that church and nonprofit leaders can do to engage and empower millennials.
Just start having those conversations outside of Sundays. Start communicating, start getting in touch. Start making those calls again. Start forming those groups. And start trying to connect outside of the church walls. Connect. Connect on a Wednesday. Connect on Saturday. And it could be just. And it doesn't have to be services. It doesn't have to be a Bible study. It could just be coming together and having a game night for the church. Like I said, my church, they do a great job of opening up the doors and allowing us to have these activities and spaces for us to connect with one another and just love on one another and just communicate. So I say, hey, take that, a better connection. Connect with your congregation, connect with your people outside of Sunday.
That's good. I heard somebody say a while back that connection is the new currency. Connection is the new currency. So
Yeah.
In this world of technology, digital technology, we have all of the stuff that we have. It would seem like we are connected, right? It would seem like everybody's connected because you could always be on, social media or your device and texting and FaceTiming and all of that. But at the same time, we are less connected. Despite all of the technology that we have, all of these means of communicating, we are less connected than we were before. And so I think what you brought up about the connections, I think is so very important. Going back to something you said previously as well about making church like home. Church needs to feel like home. This is home, I think is important, and people making those connections so that they can feel like this is where I belong.
Yeah.
And I think when you have that, I think people will stay. I think people will stay.
Yeah, because if you think about it, what is home? Home is a place where you feel safe. Home is a place where you feel loved, accepted, not judged. You get to be yourself when you're at home. So if you build an environment at your church that values that, you'll see your church flourish. You'll see real people come to your church wanting to serve. Wanting to serve. When I go to church today, I want to serve. I don't look at serving as, oh man, I got to serve today. No, I want to serve. I want to connect with the children because I work in children's ministry. I want to connect with them. I want to see them. I want to, pour into them. So if you build that environment, you'll see people wanting to serve, but you also see people coming in and trying to get something concrete, trying to listen to the message that you are giving to your congregation. So just make your church feel like home.
I failed to mention, I wanted to mention this earlier. You didn't necessarily grow up in church.
Yeah, no, I did not grow up going to church Wednesday, Sunday, three services. No, I wasn't like that. I did go to church. It wasn't every Sunday, but church for me was an experience that, I just went to church and that's what my mother took me to church and I was tagging along with her,
Yeah.
And we didn't go at
So
the
you
start.
came to faith later on.
Yeah.
It was as an
Yeah.
adult, right?
Yes. 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 I did. I did. I say just sometimes when you know you're out of church or out of those spaces, because I always had a relationship with God, and but I was always, like I said, one foot in, one foot out, not fully committing. You see that millennials have a hard time committing. That was me. I had a hard time committing. So when I fully committed, I just was like, you know, his people was about being the church. Of course, you get all different type of people, but if you want to get uh, um, um, close to his people, you got to find the right church. And that sometimes it may take some searching. It may take you going to one church for a little while. Oh, this is not for me. Going to another church, but that's where his people are. And then you can connect out, make better connections outside of the building. Some people still feel like churches is just a building. It is just a building, but they don't need the people inside the church. And hey, the people was in the church. His people is in the church. You still gotta go to to the church to find the people. Okay, if you're looking outside of that, hey, you just might find someone that's just not not of God. So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate you being honest and open about that,
yeah,
because I think and that was important because I think when you grew up outside of church,
yeah,
this wasn't just something that you were a part of, but you came to faith later. I think it's important to understand how someone comes to faith at a
right.
later age, because we're more
Mm-hmm.
likely to accept Christ and get
Mm-hmm.
saved at a younger age. So I
Yeah,
think it's important to point that out. I want to thank you again for joining tonight and
yeah.
sharing from your perspective. Anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
Um, no, I think that's it, my brother. Oh, one more thing about millennials. I feel like that we also, you know, we we also love, structure as well. We also want to learn about the word. We want to learn about um, what His word means and truly, just how to live a righteous life and all that. So when it goes back to misconception, your church doesn't have to be always full with theatrical things, analogies and stuff. Sometimes just going straight to the word and reading what God says, you know, goes a long way, and not trying to sugarcoat it, not try to water it down. We need the real, authentic uh, word from God. So I just wanted to add that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you again for joining tonight. Now, for those of you who may have tuned in late, or maybe you're watching this later, we just had a conversation with a brother in the faith as well as a co-worker about what millennials wish church leaders understood. And if you're watching this and thinking we need to talk about this more in our church or organization, then you don't want to miss my upcoming webinar on November 18th from 6:30 to 7:30 Central Time. It's called Engaging Gen Z and Millennials in Church and Nonprofit Leaders. And you can register for free at my website, www.briankwatson.com. That information is there in the description. There's a link for you to register. It's free registration. In that session, we'll dive deeper into practical tools and strategies for engaging and equipping young leaders. Plus, you'll hear directly from someone who is Gen Z and millennial, and more voices like this one. So again, click that link if you want to register. That's all for now. Remember, ordinary people can become and do the extraordinary through the power of God. Be blessed.